Hi, how's it going? So, well, today it's a bit of a different video. I'm not in the car and making a track guide or something like that, and so this can never be a good thing, right? But I'd like to explain why there wasn't a track guide for this week and why there won't be any track guides for the IR-18 or IndyCar for iRacing this season. All right, so a bit of history here. So the IndyCar is obviously a mixed series, right? So it runs on road courses and ovals, which already kind of makes it kind of a challenge because naturally people have more inclination to like one thing or the other. So it's nice that it is a mixed series, but for people that are focused on either discipline, myself, I'm only exclusively a road guy. Then obviously from my standpoint, I'd prefer like 12 weeks out of 12 with road courses, but I do understand, not only because it tries to emulate the real life series, but also for historical reasons. It is a mixed series and that's fine. It has gone over in the past like 6 out of 6, so 6 ovals and 6 road courses, and then it's after a while it's standardized on 7, and last season it was a bit of an oddball because there was the whole MSG situation, which I'll talk in a bit, and that moved the spread for 8 road courses versus 4 ovals for that season. All right, so last season it was a bit of an oddball because it was iRacing that decided the schedule and not the community as per usual. Motorsport games, which is, there is a whole situation, not going to delve into it. You can watch a bunch of videos on that if you would like, but they have an exclusive licensing agreement with IndyCar, which means that in iRacing we can't run the real life tracks during the regular season. So no Road America, no Mid-Ohio, no Barber, Indianapolis obviously, so on and so forth, which is a huge loss to be sure. Especially like Road America, I really liked in this car, but I guess it is what it is. Hopefully it will change in the future. We also don't have the branding, which kind of makes a big difference, to be honest, especially if you're not in iRacing for a long time. Like I've been there for a long time in iRacing, over 10 years by now. And so if I see IR-18, oh, fine, I know that that's the IndyCar, so I'm going to race it either way. But for someone that's new, they're thinking, well, I want to race the IndyCar. They search for IndyCar, don't find anything. Maybe they read something on the internet and they see, well, there's this whole situation with MSG, and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to invest time into this car because who knows, maybe it's going away in 1 season, 2 seasons. Like, why bother, right? And so they're going to pursue other cars. And so that obviously was a huge hit to series participation. But yeah, not much that we as a community can do about it. So it is what it is, I suppose. Well, last season I saw a bit of an opportunity because it was iRacing that decided the schedule due to the MSG situation. So they put on the schedule quite a number of interesting tracks. Historically, the IndyCar season has been very focused on North American tracks, which is understandable as that is a North American series. But that's kind of a bit of a dichotomy because if you're a fan of IndyCar, then I suppose you would like it to emulate real life as much as possible. So run NA-based tracks, lots of ovals, and with the correct split between ovals and road courses, and like who cares about Europe or Asia, right? Doesn't matter. But if you are a fan of the car and not the series, which is my case, like I think that the IR-18 is pretty much the best car in iRacing because it has the tire degradation that brings a lot of interest mid-race for strategy and all that. So if you're an IndyCar fan, I guess that's fine in terms of scheduling, but if you are a fan of the car and not the series, well, then it's a bit of a different story, right? Because I guess being a fan of the car, you wouldn't care as much which tracks are selected. You would want just the best tracks available, the best tracks that give the best participation possible, because the car has a problem with participation. Let's not tiptoe around it, like the F1 car, because it's a hard car. It's not easy to go fast on it. And so last season we had interesting weeks. I thought that Suzuka had very good participation. Obviously that's in Japan, so Monza had very good participation. That's in Italy. And finally Spa, I was very surprised by that because that was week 12, which is pretty much everybody's checked out by then. They're like, well, I'm just going to wait for the next season patch, and they're looking forward to the other cars and everything. So like participation, it kind of dwindles as the season progresses, right? Week 1, week 2, everybody's super hype, and then week 6, people are like, you know what? And then by week 12, it's just, who cares? People are already waiting for the next patch. But surprisingly, week 12, Spa, races were splitting. Like, we had people pretty much every day. I tried to get a race in Spa. Afternoons, I could. Nights, I could. Didn't matter the time zone. And so that was very surprising to me, because it showed to me, well, if a suitable track in terms of like interest is selected, then people will come, people will race the car. And yeah, okay, so where do we go from here, right? So this iRacing season, which I kind of foresaw, there were 8 road courses and 4 ovals. The road courses that were selected were really good, except for, I think, Chicago. It was always going to be, here or there. And I was kind of surprised for Interlagos as well. I thought participation would be better there, but it wasn't. It was a pretty dead week, to be honest with you. So I saw that opportunity, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and bump participation as much as I can. And so I started doing the guides here in the channel to generate interest for the series and post those guides both in Reddit and on the forums, and also in the IndyCar Discord. So people that wanted to get a grip with the car, they could have something to go off of, because setups are very influential in this car. And I'm sure you guys understand, I can't like just grab a set from a paid shop and throw it into the guide, right? There's no point to that. People, they do invest a lot of time and effort to do those sets. But what I did every week was just go off of the iRacing base set and tweak it a bit to make a good set. And I was really pleased with the results. The sets were not that much off from the paid sets. I have both VRS and Apex Racing Academy sets. And as I raced both of those, and then the set that I tweaked off of the iRacing baseline, I mean, the iRacing baseline was a bit worse, obviously, but it wasn't like this massive difference. I think the one track I didn't like the results was Monza. It was a bit off there. Because you had to tweak the suspension a lot, and I don't know how to tweak suspension. I'm not just gonna copy like the values, right? I can't do that. And so yeah, that week setup was not that great. But aside from that, the other weeks the setup was like really good. In fact, the qualifying set I made in a couple weeks was even better. So I kind of used my own set based on the iRacing one for qualifying, which was interesting to say the least. And the result was really nice. People started subscribing to the channel. It's not a lot of subs. Like you say, I have like 200 or 300 subs, if that. And so I'm not going to make any money off of the channel, not under any illusion that's going to happen. But it was nice because I saw more faces, and I think 2 points in the season, people even contacted me in voice chat, right, and said, hey, I saw your video on YouTube and I'm using the set, and like it feels good. I'm like, wow, great. This is exactly the reason I made the videos. I made the videos for people to like see it on Reddit, and they to check out, I don't know, IndyCar is racing on Monza. Well, I have the track. I might as well buy the car and try it. Like, I have this guide, I have the setup, why not? And then they go in there and race, and they have fun, and maybe they start running the car another week. So great, that's the exact reason why I started making the guides. All right, so then you might be asking yourself, well, why not continue making the guides? Well, now this is the situation. So this season, we are back to community schedules. And as I said, historically, the community schedules are very NA focused. And there's like 1-2 tracks that are international. And there's I don't fault the organizers necessarily for that, but they have like, well, it seems to me at least, they have a huge focus on the center field race, or the soft race, which happens on Monday, right? So it happens every Monday on the first time slot, which is 00 GMT, or midnight GMT. And so that race usually goes official, even splits, and everybody's there for that race. And people get huge points, and it's a huge event. I can't take part in those races, unfortunately, because I have 2 kids, and so I have to, at that point in time, I have to tuck them into bed, and you know how it goes. If you have kids, you are aware of the situation. But then I come to the next race, which happens on, I think, 02 GMT, and that usually goes official as well, so that's nice. With less people, obviously, it usually doesn't split. Though in Watkins this week it did split, so I guess that's interesting. Possibly a good participation week. But then after that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all that days, right? You maybe get a race on midnight GMT, maybe 02 GMT, and that's that. Like, no races during America's morning, America's afternoon. It's just that. Like, don't even try. And believe me, I've tried a lot. I've tried to get races on other time slots, but people don't show up. However, Last season, when we had Monza, when we had Spa, people did show up. And races did happen on those strange time slots, like on European prime time, night at Europe, right? Afternoon in the US. Races were happening. I remember even a race split, I think it was on Friday, I was like absolutely floored. They registered for the race and there was a bunch of people there. I'm like, what the hell? This is not like the series I know. Okay. Well, but then the season we're back to the usual scheduling, right? And so what is the schedule? I have it open right here. So we have Watkins Glen. It is the first race, and it has had good participation so far, right? So, well, I say that. I'm looking right now, so that's why I'm looking to the other ones right here. So the soft race had good participation, 39 people, so it's split. And then the very next race, 37 people, is also split. But then we go to Tuesday. And so this is the time slot for 04 GMT. Okay, it's late in the night, right? People are not going to show up. 6 people, and then 1 person, 2, and then 8, and then 7 for this last race, which was Europe nights. So it's already dead, right? And this doesn't surprise me at all because this is what always happens. So it's not like, oh, this is a huge surprise. No, it's always this way. All right, next week it's going to be Michigan. It's an oval. I don't care about ovals. If you do, like, great for you. But for me, it's a dead week. Then we go for Daytona road course. Usually good participation. I think this week is going to... people are going to show up, at least in US time zones, right? The other ones, it's not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up. Next we have Montreal, which is Gilles Villeneuve. Yeah, I think that's just a soft race and maybe one, or it's going to be pretty dead. And we have Atlanta, it's an oval. Next we have Mosport, which is Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. It's not going to happen. Like, it's going to be soft race and 1 race a day, if that. I have Phoenix, which is an oval. Then we have Mount Panorama, which is Bathurst. I think this week is going to have good participation. People usually show up for Bathurst because they really like the track. And so I will myself be on here for this week. This is week 8. We have Charlotte, which is an oval. Then we have Nürburgring Combine, which is the Nordschleife, and the GP circuit. This also always has good participation. Historically, it's the track that has the most participation in the series. And so I'll be there for this one as well. And people will be as well. And they're going to fire me for I-rated because I'm not good in Nordschleife. We have Pocono, which is an oval. And finally, we have Interlagos, which was dead last season. It is week 12, and it's going to be as dead, if not more, this season. So don't get your hopes up. So, yeah, going through the whole season, what do you see? Well, I see 4 tracks that have a shot to have for having good participation. It's Watkins Glen, Daytona, Bathurst, and Nordschleife. These 4. Okay. Well, then it's a tall ask, right? You say, well, I'm going to make guides for the dead weeks. It's 7 road courses and 5 ovals. And nobody's going to take part in these dead tracks that I mentioned. You know what? I could do that. But then you have the introduction of the LMP3, which has huge participation right now. Have the introduction of the Cadillac GTP, which people are super hyped for. I saw like 400 people yesterday on IMSA. It was absolutely insane. Same track, by the way. It's also Watkins Glen. There's the special event for Watkins coming up. So that's a factor for sure. And it's kind of hard because you think, well, I'm going to invest all this time in preparation, like practicing the track, making a setup and everything, and then you get 2 races the whole week. And then you do the same thing, but you invest time in LMP3 or LMP2 or GTP to mention only the prototypes, right? Because I'm an open wheel guy, I don't race GTs. But if you go for GT3, then you have the VRS Sprint, which always has good participation. Well, what do you get there then? If you invest your time like practicing and getting a setup, you have races every single time slot with multiple splits. So it's kind of hard to ask not only you, but also me to invest time into that. I wish this was the only problem, though, because it's not. Okay, so next up, we have track temperatures and time of the day here. Now, I don't understand why, but for some reason, the organizers for IndyCar, like, they have a hard-on for putting on like very hot track temperatures every season. I don't understand. It's like Watkins Glen, it's 3:10 p.m. And then Daytona, it's night, it's fine. Then Montreal, it's midday. And then Mosport, it's 3 p.m. Bathurst is fine. Bathurst is during the morning. Nürburgring, midday. Interlagos, midday. What happens? Track temperatures are very hot, so the soft tires, they basically melt in 1-2 laps. And so you have to like basically nurse the car for a whole stint. I'm gonna mention the stints right next, so just you wait. And so I think it's very boring to just like you push the car for 2 laps and then you're just tiptoeing around, you're like pushing the 30%, 50% throttle because who knows, you might spin. I mean, man, like, come on, just let me push, let everybody else push, not only me. And then you see a guy, you're following someone and then they spin out and you gain the position for free. But how fun is that? Like, how much fun is that? Or you spin out and then you lose the position. That's also not fun. Okay, so I don't understand why we have to race with always hot temperatures. If it was for me, and it's how they do in Indy Pro, which is the US Open Wheel C series, it seems to me like they are very consistent in putting cooler track temperatures, which results in more grip and lower lap times. And I think I know why they do that. It's because people that go to Indy Pro, they come from F4 or F3. And those cars, they're really good. F3 has a huge amount of downforce to engine power ratio. And so it's a very grippy car. And so you get from there and you go to Indy Pro, the car has a lot less grip relatively. And then you're just spinning out like who knows why. And then at some point, if you're a new guy, you're like, you know what, why even bother? I can run F3, which has a bunch of people taking part. It's always splitting. Or I can just waste my time here trying to learn this car that has one race a day. Like, why bother, right? And then you just give up. And in the IndyCar, it's pretty much the same thing. Like you put, I think this week's like 40, 49, 50 Celsius track temp for Watkins Glen. The soft tire lasts maybe 2 laps, and then you're pushing 2 seconds over lap times after that. And if you lose concentration for a split second, you're just looping around. And so someone comes into the series and they're like, well, I have Watkins, I like the track, I'm gonna buy the car and check out how it is. And then the guy enters the race, does 3 laps, spins out, crashes, there's no fast repair, which by the way, it shouldn't have, like that part I agree with. And then race over. Guy tries again, spins out again, just gives up on the series. And so it's very disheartening, I don't understand why that's done. Right, if you heard the last part there, my kid was at the door, and so I just went in there and saw what he wanted, but I'm going to finish up the video right now. And so yeah, last thing I was pointing out is that it's the track temperatures are very unwelcoming for new people. So you have to practice a lot and you really have to understand how the car progresses during the stint so you know what to expect and then avoid crashing and spinning out, which can be done but requires time. So it requires experience with the car and requires practice time so that doesn't happen to you. And I have friends that I have personally invited to IndyCar, and it depends on the track, so when they enter a race without much practice, I kind of already know what's going to happen. So if they haven't practiced at all and it's a hard track, I know that like by minute 20, minute 30, something is going to happen. They're going to crash. And that's exactly what happens. And they're like, you know what? I'm just going to go back to LMP2 because that's way easier. And I can't blame them, to be sure. to be truthful with you. All right, so that's my first point. I think that we could perhaps like use cooler track temps. But the second problem I have is like way bigger than this, because I think that, well, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I think that the IR-18 is like the best car in the service, right? But why is that? It's because of the tire degradation and tire strategy that I don't see in any other car. Maybe in the F1 car, but I'm not good at that car. I tried it a couple of times. I think that's very similar over there, so don't include that car in this conversation, right? But for all other cars I have tried, prototypes, GT3s, the Radical, Formula Ford, whatever you want to think about. Is there tire degradation in those cars? Yes. Is it like relevant? Well, not really, right? I mean, if you're talking about European Sprint Series, then kind of yes. Then you can switch out the front axle or the rear axle depending on the track. But it's not like the car is completely different, right? From the beginning of the stint to the end of the stint. It's not a different car. It's a bit different, but you can cope with it fine. Now with the Lara, the IR-18, man, it's apples and oranges, especially with the soft tire. You start with a great tire, you have a bunch of grip, 3-4 laps, tires completely destroyed, you're just hanging on for dear life, which is fun, right? But it's kind of hard, as I mentioned. But that's okay. That's not a problem. So there's some dynamic that can be obtained there. So I do remember there was a race, I think 2 seasons ago, it was in Red Bull Ring. It was a 1 hour duration race, and there was a very interesting dynamic in which you could like pit twice, and then you would like go, for example, hard, hard, soft, or hard, soft, soft, and some combination like that. And you basically just could push every single lap with fuel map 1. And most people would do that. Alternatively, what you could do is just use a lower engine map, like fuel map 3 or 4, save, and just do a single stop and really nurse the tire so you could go the whole distance. And so that was very interesting because in a couple races, what happened was I was pushing P1 because I had done a single stop, and then the guys that were coming behind, they were cutting the gap very, very fast. And so it was very interesting to have people in different strategies. Okay, so what's the problem then? You might ask. Well, for this season, Watkins Glen has duration of like about 45 minutes, and it's a one stopper. You have no way around it, because even if you are pushing fuel map 1, you can't possibly expand more than 7 liters in both stints. So you have absolutely no reason to do 2 stops. Like maybe I want to use the hard tire for the whole race. I mean, sure, but you're going to lose 20 seconds. And if you want to actually gun for the race win, nobody's going to do that. And so there's the reason. What follows from that is that there's no strategy variation. Everybody's going to do a single stop. The variation is either you start on hards and go to softs, or you start on softs and go to hards. That's it. And so that's like, it's one thing that's very interesting in the car is that you can perhaps like mix the race duration. So you can have possible strategies. Maybe one's going to be faster than the other, sure, but you can make another one work. It can be marginal, right? It can be like 5-10 seconds difference. But you have more safety in one case if you do more stops, for example. That can be interesting. Okay, next we have Daytona. I have calculated here, I think the race duration is going to be about 42, 43 minutes. Same thing. Montreal, same thing. Mosport, same thing. Mount Panorama and Nordschleife, I didn't calculate, but I mean, who cares? I'm going to race those either way. And then Interlagos, I didn't calculate, but it's going to be that week, so who cares? So for the 4 tracks that I calculated it, they're all single stoppers. And what follows? If you for sure going to have to make a single stop because it's the fastest way to go around the 45 minutes of race, necessarily going to have to do a full stint with hards and a full stint with softs. And the softs degrade super fast, and we are using very high track temperatures. And so what happens is that for newcomers, they have to nurse the tires for 40% of the race. And then you may ask, well, that requires skill. That's an aspect that we should require from the racers. That's fair. But then you have to consider alternatives, man. Like there are other series in the service. That's the whole issue that I'm pointing out. This week, interestingly, IMSA is on the very same track, very same configuration. It's using Watkins Glen boot configuration. And so I did an IMSA race after the IndyCar race. And you know what? I was using the Cadillac GTP. By the way, fantastic car. I could push the whole race. As the tires degraded, I maybe had some understeer, but I could cope with it. And then I changed the front axle during a pit stop, and it was kind of fine. But basically, I could just go all out. And obviously, there's traffic, which is very interesting. That's one aspect that you can't really replicate in the IndyCar series. But otherwise, I didn't have to like tiptoe around and be afraid that the car is going to move from under me and spin out and crash. And for people that are newer and have less experience and don't have a direct drive and don't have good pedals and everything, because like for me it's a bit easier because I have good equipment. But for someone that's using a G29, which is back here, which was my previous equipment, man, it's really hard. You don't have good feedback on the wheel. You don't really know when the car is losing the front end and you're about to spin out. And then you kind of have to underdrive the whole race, because if you don't underdrive, you're just putting yourself at like the very brink of going over and just spinning out. Like, do you want to make a series that basically requires good equipment? I guess you can, but are you going to get good participation? No, you're not. And so yeah, like I rambled on for quite a while now, so I'm going to stop. But basically that's the reasoning. There are not going to be any guides for this season. I hope you understand. As for myself, I'm going to invest my time mostly in IMSA and ESS. I'm really liking the Cadillac GTP, or I can just go back to the LMP2, which I've been racing for a few seasons now. It's a very good car, has always been. And I'll be back for the IR-18 for 2 specific weeks, which are going to be Bathurst and Nordschleife, both because, first of all, I like both tracks, and second of all, those are going to have good participation, so I will not be pigeonholed into racing 6 people once a day, which is always a good thing. All right, I hope you do understand. I'm kind of sorry that this has to be kind of a rambling / ranting video, but if it was down to me, if I was part of the series organization, I would do things differently. Would it work? I don't know. But personally, I would either do 1 hour long races, so you have the strategy variation, or I would just limit the fuel. So rather than having 70 liters, you can like have 50. Well, we have to calculate, right? But let's assume like 50 or something, and then and then you can have like multiple strategies possible, single stopper, 2 stopper, something like that. Secondly, I would use cooler track temps. I would do races mostly in the morning or late afternoon, basically to make it more forgiving for newer players and people that don't have good equipment, direct drive, load cell pedals, that kind of thing. And finally, I would just use popular tracks. Are you going to put Spa every season? If it works, don't complain, man. If you check out the European Sprint Series schedule, which is ESS, they have basically Spa, Bonza, Fuji, Watkins Glen, Road America. One of those 5, Le Mans, every single season. Every single season, you look at DSS, there's going to be Spa there, there's going to be Le Mans. Maybe Spa is going to be off 1 season, but it's going to be right back on for the next. And why is that? Because people show up for the races. And if you have a popular series, like if you're talking about GT3s, in GT3s you can even put Lime Rock Park, which by the way is this week's track, and people show up. You have 3 splits in Lime Rock Park. I guess people are masochists. But if you have a low participation car, which is the case with the IR-18, you can't afford to use bad track, well, quote unquote bad tracks, like unpopular tracks. You can't put in like a Mid-Ohio, a Mosport, Barber, well, in this case, Interlagos even, which apparently is a dead week, and things like that, and then expect, well, people didn't show up, I guess, that sucks. But you have to use the more popular tracks. It is what it is. Or you can run the race, or you can run the series like a league. I guess you can do that as well. You just make the schedule, you have your soft race on Monday, and then who cares? Like if you even have another race during the week, not my problem. So that's a way to go about it as well. All right. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you had quote unquote fun watching this video. And who knows? We'll see what content comes next to the channel. Bye bye. See you soon.